With an eye toward emerging threats on the horizon, the United States now has at least 6 new air-to-air missiles in active development. These weapons will give America's fighters the ability to engage more targets from further than ever before. But with new beyond visual range weapons already entering service for Russia and China, will these new missiles be enough? Let's dive into the secretive world of air-to-air missile development. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power. The United States may operate the most advanced fighters on the planet, but today, its stealth jets like the F-22 and F-35 fly into the fight carrying what basically amounts to the same air-to-air missile loadout that was used in Desert Storm more than 2 decades ago. But that's all about to change. The US currently has at least 6 advanced new air-to-air missiles cruising towards service, offering more speed, more range, and more capability than ever before. Today's American fighters carry 2 different types of air-to-air missiles. The first is the radar-guided AIM-120 Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, or AMRAAM, as you'll often hear it called. And the second is one of several in-service iterations of the infrared-guided AIM-9 Sidewinder missile. These weapons have seen continued improvements over the years, but they're no spring chickens. The AMRAAM's been in service since 1991, and the Sidewinder can trace its lineage back all the way to 1956. Of course, it would be a mistake to assume that these missiles are still the same weapons that were first fielded all those years ago. The latest AMRAAM, the AIM-120D, reached initial operating capability in 2015 and represents a massive leap in capability over the original weapon, with 50% more range than its direct predecessor, a 2-way data link with the launching aircraft, a GPS-enhanced inertial measurement unit, and high off-boresight launch capabilities. The most modern AMRAAM is still ranked among the most capable air-to-air weapons ever to fly. In fact, according to the Air Force, an F-15 launching a medium-range AMRAAM against a BQM-167 target drone reportedly scored the longest-range air-to-air kill in history back in March of 2021, though they've still yet to disclose exactly what that distance was. Today's most advanced Sidewinders, the AIM-9X, are even further removed from their earliest iterations. Widely touted as among the most advanced air-to-air missiles in history, the Block 2 AIM-9X is, technically speaking, an infrared-guided weapon. But it might be more accurate to say that it's guided by an infrared imaging sensor that can store target models within its onboard computer and then discern between them on the fly. As a result, this weapon has proven very effective against all kinds of targets that aren't traditionally considered heat signatures, like the Chinese surveillance balloon that ended up being the F-22 Raptor's first ever air-to-air kill when it downed it off the coast of South Carolina on February 4th, which just so happened to be my birthday, and I choose to believe the Air Force did that on purpose as a gift to me. Now, the Block 2 iteration of the AIM-9X carries over the Block 1's thrust vectoring nozzle and high off-boresight targeting capability, which means this is an incredibly maneuverable missile. It can even be used to engage targets flying behind you. But the Block 2 version even adds a lock-on after launch capability, which allows the pilot to launch the missile before the missile seeker has found a target. Instead, the missile's guided initially via a data link with the aircraft until it's close enough for its own infrared seeker to take over. These iterative improvements on America's long-serving air-to-air missiles have allowed the US to maintain its competitive edge in air combat without having to invest heavily into developing and fielding clean-sheet new weapons. That is, until now. Sticking with the same overall design of legacy missile systems is in itself a limiting factor, and these missiles were originally fielded way before stealth fighters had to worry about carrying their munitions internally. Now, with advanced new threats on the horizon and the need to jam as much firepower into the fuselage of stealth fighters as possible, Uncle Sam is once again on the market for some brand new air-to-air firepower. But that's far from the only reason America needs some new missiles. The F-35 is currently amid a massive upgrade in computing power known as Tech Refresh 3 that will directly lead to another massive series of upgrades called Block 4. The Block 4 F-35 will fly with more than 75 significant improvements over today's jets, making this the most dramatic increase in its capability since it started flying. Now that, in conjunction with new 6th-generation fighters in active development that, like the F-35, place a massive emphasis on beyond visual range engagements, all means that America needs new further-reaching munitions that can leverage the full breadth of capabilities offered by these aircraft. But if that weren't enough, the US also has to consider the competition. Not only has its European allies already begun fielding incredibly advanced air-to-air weapons like the Meteor missile, but geopolitical opponents like Russia and China have also begun fielding advanced new beyond visual range weapons. I'll give you a few examples for context, starting with Russia's R-37, which goes by the NATO reporting name AA-13 Axehead. It's a beyond visual range, hypersonic air-to-air missile with a reported top speed of somewhere between Mach 5 and 6, which it accomplishes via brute force, using a dual-pulse rocket motor. The R-37 itself has a reported range of better than 90 miles, which is admittedly short of the range offered by America's AMRAAM. But the R-37M variant adds an additional rocket booster stage, which Russia claims can extend its effective range as far as 250 miles. Now, this missile can find targets at these immense distances thanks to a combination of a data link with the launching aircraft or potentially with AWACS, and then its own internal semi-active and active radar guidance systems. In other words, it's launched well before locking onto its target, and it's guided through a good portion of its flight path until it's close enough to lock on with its own internal systems. Now, this missile has reportedly scored some kills against Ukrainian jets, but it's safe to say that Russia has probably exaggerated some of its capabilities. And this weapon probably only poses a real serious threat to large, sluggish targets like AWACS. And then we have China's PL-15, which is a similar long-range air-to-air missile design that also leverages a dual-pulse solid-fuel rocket for propulsion. Now, this may also be a hypersonic platform, but some experts contend that it's probably more in the Mach 4 to 5 range. It has a reported range of up to 124 miles and is guided to those far-flung targets, again via two-way data link, before transitioning over to its own internal active electronically scanned array radar that China says is highly resistant to countermeasures. A RUSI analysis assessed that the PL-15 probably outclasses America's AMRAAM, but falls a bit short of Europe's Meteor. And depending on how much stock you put into Russian claims, this weapon may actually pose a more potent threat than the R-37. Now, of course, these are just two of the myriad new air-to-air missiles in development for America's competitors, but they all point to a broader pattern of ever longer engagement zones and air combat taking place over dozens or even hundreds of miles. And this all means that America needs new, longer-ranged weapons to retain what's called first kill opportunity, or the first chance to shoot down your opponent. Now, this is incredibly important as sensor suites continue to improve and missiles become more capable, because the first fighter to get a lock and to launch a missile against its opponent will probably win. Of course, not every engagement can take place at triple-digit ranges, so America also needs new missiles that are highly maneuverable and capable of engaging targets at closer ranges as well. If you can field a missile that can do both, all the better. And with that, let's dive into the new air-to-air missiles the US has in active development, starting with the AIM-260 Joint Advanced Tactical Missile, which is probably the highest profile of all of these new missiles in development, despite the fact that details are sparse regarding all of them, AIM-260 included. It's slated to replace the AIM-120 AMRAAM and should be about the same size, but with a significant increase in range meant to offset any potential advantage posed by the PL-15, which again has a claimed range of around 124 miles. But seeing as the AMRAAM is already capable of reaching targets in triple-digit ranges, this advanced new replacement will probably offer a really dramatic jump in capability over even the PL-15. Renewing America's beyond visual range advantage, and once more securing that first kill opportunity. The Joint Air Force and Navy AIM-260 effort was first disclosed to the public in 2019, and few details about it have surfaced since. To date, the full range, the propulsion type, or the capability set expected of this missile all remain classified. All we know for sure is that because this weapon is expected to offer similar dimensions to the AMRAAM, that it should be easily stowed within the weapons bays of stealth fighters like the F-35 and F-22. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that the AIM-260 will come with a range of better than 200 miles, and I'm basing that bet on the fact that there are other missiles in this list that are about half the size of the AMRAAM that offer comparable range. So with that much more room for fuel and propulsion systems, I'd imagine this thing will be extremely fast and have some real legs on it. Up next is the Long Range Engagement Weapon, or LREW. All the way back in 2017, the Pentagon announced that Raytheon was already 2 years deep into development on this new weapon, which at the time was also billed as a potential replacement for the AMRAAM. However, unlike the AIM-260, the LREW has since been reported as too large to be carried internally by 5th generation fighters, like the F-22 and F-35. And all that means is that this weapon would have to be carried under wing, either by those 5th gen jets or, more likely, by 4th generation fighters. Like the AIM-260, not much has been released about the LREW's anticipated capabilities, but because it won't be limited by the internal dimensions of a stealth fighter's payload bay, it does open up some very interesting possibilities. One possibility could be a ramjet propulsion system like that of Europe's Meteor missile, which could offer a potent mix of speed and range that can't currently be crammed into an F-35. As an extended-range air-to-air missile meant for external carriage, likely on older fighters, the LREW may be really well suited for engaging vulnerable airborne targets like enemy AWACS from standoff distances, while stealthier and more modern jets like the F-35 or the NGAD penetrate deeper into enemy airspace. Up next is Raytheon's Peregrine air-to-air missile, which is actually my favorite one on this list, and up until recently was a self-funded program. Raytheon first unveiled this pint-sized powerhouse back in 2019 with some very big claims. According to them, it offers similar and sometimes even superior performance to the long-serving AMRAAM in about half the size. Raytheon describes the Peregrine as having at least as much range as the AMRAAM, with the high level of maneuverability offered by today's Sidewinder. And yet somehow they managed to cram all that capability into an airframe that's just 6 feet long and weighs just 150 pounds. Now for context, the AIM-120D AMRAAM is 12 feet long and weighs just shy of 360 pounds. Raytheon says the Peregrine's reach is beyond medium range, and that it carries a tri-mode seeker, though they haven't offered much detail more than that, leaving us to guess what type of seeker that might mean. It's possible that it may even fly with both radar-guided and infrared-guided seekers on board. Most importantly, because of its compact design, stealth fighters could fly with a lot more Peregrine air-to-air missiles than they could with today's AMRAAMs. Now that's a very big deal for the F-35, which can currently carry only 4 weapons in all internally when it heads into the fight. The Air Force Research Lab awarded Raytheon a contract in December of 2022 to continue work on this missile. Up next is the Modular Advanced Missile, or MAM, which is among the newest additions to this list and one of the missiles with the fewest details available to the public. We really only heard about this missile program recently and indirectly, as a result of it being mentioned in the Air Force's Research, Development, Test, and Evaluation Appropriations portion of their 2023 fiscal year budget request. And as you might expect, details beyond that are pretty scant. To date, we don't know what type of seeker, propulsion system, or capabilities this missile is intended to offer, but we do know that in March of last year, the Air Force announced plans to conduct a test launch of this weapon from a fighter in the near future. But despite the mystery surrounding the MAM program, the use of that word modular in its title might actually give us some important hints. There are a number of ways a modular missile design could be beneficial, whether it means being able to swap propulsion systems, warheads, seekers, or all of the above. It would effectively mean fielding a wide variety of new missile types, representing different threats for an enemy to need to counter without the repeated and costly development cycles associated with each. And then we've got Lockheed Martin's Cuda missile, which in some ways is similar to the Peregrine. Despite being around for some time now, not much is known about this weapon, including whether or not Cuda itself is an acronym. The weapon is often discussed in terms of the Air Force's Small Advanced Capabilities Missile, or SACM effort. Lockheed Martin themselves described the Cuda as a small LRAAM-class radar-guided dogfight missile that could, quote, allow the F-35 to triple its internal capacity. Now, as I mentioned before, the F-35 can only carry 4 missiles internally right now. In an air-to-air loadout, that would be 2 AMRAAMs and 2 Sidewinders, though Lockheed has already announced that they can and soon will double the F-35's AMRAAM capacity to 4. However, like the Peregrine, the Cuda is so much smaller than the AMRAAM that it would allow for a whopping 12 of these air-to-air missiles to be stored internally, giving the F-35 a huge leap in air combat capacity. Maybe the most unique detail about the Cuda we've learned so far is that it uses hit-to-kill technology rather than an explosive warhead to take down enemy jets. Now, this allows for the omission of a large and heavy warhead, which might account for some of the missile's small size. And the last missile on our list is Boeing's Long-Range Air-to-Air Missile, or LRAAM. And unlike a lot of the other weapons on this list, Boeing has claimed that this new missile isn't intended as a replacement for the AMRAAM or any other missile in service for that matter, but rather represents an entirely new capability for American air power. Boeing initially unveiled this missile concept back in 2021, and the Air Force Research Laboratory seemed to dig it. They awarded them a continued development contract for the weapon in 2022. Now, like the Russian R-37M we talked about earlier, or a multi-stage rocket, this missile is made up of 2 stages. When fired, the booster stage ignites to provide an initial burst of speed and to carry the kill vehicle or warhead some amount of distance. At some point, the booster separates from the kill vehicle and the kill vehicle's own rocket booster ignites to close with the target. This 2-stage design is expected to provide a great deal of speed, range, and a high degree of maneuverability, allowing for different propulsion approaches for initial flight and then for a more aerobatic terminal flight into the target. Now, this could solve some interesting problems, because one of the biggest challenges of trying to target a fighter from beyond visual range, especially at triple-digit ranges, is that the missile is usually pretty close to expending all of its fuel by the time it reaches that target. But the target itself, as you might imagine, is trying to maneuver out of the way. Now, with slow-moving aircraft like AWACS or tankers, this isn't much of a problem. But with aerobatic and maneuverable fighters, it can be a real issue. This is part of the reason why the AIM-54 Phoenix was never a real dominant dogfighting weapon, and likewise why Russia's R-37M has been described by Ukrainian pilots as more of a suppressive weapon than anything else. They can usually dodge these missiles, but it gives them something to worry about. However, if you were to design this missile in such a way that the first stage had a rocket booster meant to carry the weapon to extreme speeds and cover great distances, followed by a second stage with a thrust vectoring nozzle for added maneuverability, you just might have the makings of an air-to-air missile that can reliably take out fighters from triple-digit ranges, whereas today, that's more of a roll of the dice. Now, it's important to remind you that these missiles are in active development, which means how they manifest in service, or if they manifest in service at all, remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure. As America continues to invest heavily into fielding the most technologically advanced tactical aircraft on the planet, it's essential that the missiles America leverages in air-to-air combat keep pace technologically. Because the truth is, it's not the fighter that will score kills against enemy jets. It's the missile. And one would hope that by the time America fields the next generation air dominance fighter, which by all accounts will be the most advanced and expensive tactical aircraft in all of history, that it won't be stuck relying on Sidewinder missiles that have been around since the 1950s. And on that ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure you swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and motivation from all around the Force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below, and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.